I assume you all know and read and watch Kara on a regular basis, but if you're not familiar, she is one of the, if not the most influential voice in Silicon Valley.
Okay.
Okay. Well, the only person who could get Bill Gates and Steve Jobs to appear on stage together.
Yes, that was
probably
something.
One of the only people who could get Mark Zuckerberg to melt in his hoodie.
That wasn't that hard.
I guess it wasn't that. And you were asking him about privacy.
Yes, I was.
And you at one point...
Apparently they have privacy problems over at Facebook.
Shocking, right? And at one point you became so well-sourced within Yahoo that you were basically breaking board meeting insights in real time.
In real time, yeah.
But along the way, you've reinvented yourself multiple times, so we'll get into all of it. But you've really built your career on interrogating power. You don't court it. Mm-hmm. You are someone who has been described as both feared and loved by your sources. But
I'm not so sure about the love part, but okay. That was a headline. It was kind of silly, but whatever. That's fine.
I talked to someone who knows you well who said the same thing. So maybe it's true in personal
I think
circles.
what happens is I'm a pretty tough interviewer, and I'm actually relatively nice in person, and so people are kind of off-putting, and they're like, oh, you're actually nice. I said, not if you did something bad. But if you did, you're in trouble, so.
But what does it take to ask the questions and say the things that so many other people are afraid to say and ask?
Well, it's interesting, and I find journalists actually very risk-averse. They're waiting for either the next access or they're nervous to say something, and so they often couch things in terms of, some, like, it's a very Trumpian thing, some people are saying, and what I try to do instead is I want to ask the questions people actually want to know, and I don't know what the price for me is, but there doesn't seem to be one, right? I mean, eventually, someday, Elon's going to have me taken to Mars without a mask, but that's a long time from now, because it'll never happen. So I think people don't ask the question that people want, and I don't know quite what they're trying to protect. And once you do it, everybody kind of goes along with it. And one of the things I always said, and I've said it many times, is that really smart people like smart questions. That's why Jobs kept coming back again and again to our events, and he never did any other events, not because we were obsequious to him, but we were challenging to him. And we weren't challenging in a snarky way. We were challenging we're going to ask you tough questions. You can either answer them or not, but we're going to ask them to you. And I think if you're fair with people, they tend to respond. Not everybody. People that are insecure, require to being licked up and down all day, those kind of things have abandoned me. But I'm fine with that. I have no interest in people that can't take a good question.
I was going to ask this later, but you really don't pull punches, but you've never felt any consequence whatsoever for not pulling those punches.
No, I mean, just they don't talk to me, but I don't care. Like, I have 4 kids. Like, I don't really care if they like me or not. It's just like, it's kind of a, I probably did more interviews with Elon than anybody else. Although now he doesn't do interviews, he just pontificates. But he used to be quite a good interview, actually, really interesting. He would answer questions. No, I mean, he doesn't talk to me. He's mad at me about I don't know what. But no, I don't care if he doesn't want to talk to me. That's his ride around the sun. I don't care. Zuckerberg won't talk to me anymore, but he's had a lot of disasters with me. I kind of accept that. I mean, that sweating one was bad for him, but then he followed it by saying Holocaust deniers don't mean to lie to me, which was really problematic for him. And so, he seems to get very nervous around me, so I get it. I get why he doesn't want to talk to me. Plus, he's like, why should I talk to her? Like, like my life is so good. I get to wander around and do MMA fighting, and everybody agrees with me and whatever.
We'll get back to Zuckerberg, but we will, because there was a meeting at the White House that I'm sure
God.
But
Scott Galloway, excuse me for saying this, he said sex workers have more dignity.
All right, well, since we're there, I was going to ask you about your confidence, but let's just go there. Anyone who's read Burn Book knows that you open the book with that 2016
I do, which
meeting.
is, so everyone was so shocked that they were so, honestly, if I was a billionaire, would I put up with that shit? Like, don't you get the billion so you don't have to do that? That kind of ass licking, but I guess not. But I wrote a story, I broke a story. It was actually a great scoop. I was at a farmer's market in San Francisco, and I got a call from another billionaire. And he's like, can you believe they're doing that? And I go, what? Like I pretend I know, yeah. And he's like, they're all going to the White House for this thing. Now, they had made no announcement, which was, usually they do a press release if they're going to meet the new president. This was just after he was elected, the first time Trump was, I think it was 2016, November, December probably. And so they were all going, but nobody said anything. So they were skulking up there to Trump Tower. And they weren't, so I started calling around. I have everybody's cell phone. I'm like, oh, I hear you're going to the thing. And they're like, how did you know? And I was like, ha, I know. And so they were sort of like, well, we're going to talk to him. And I said, yeah, but he's so anti-immigration and he's going to ban Muslims. And they were like, no, he's not. He just says that. I'm like, I don't mean to be rude, but he said it 56 times on the campaign trail. I feel like he's going to keep that particular heinous promise. And and so I called them, I write this story, and they went in there, and of course I was getting real-time updates from some of the people there because they didn't want to be there. Most of them didn't want to be there. But they went, and what they wanted was tax repatriation, no regulation, and a bunch of other things. And in exchange, they were willing to be obsequious, right, in order to get them. And so I wrote a piece, and I called them Sheeple. I was like, these are sheeple, and sheep people, if you need help there. And so, they were kind of mad. Like, we're going to go in and we're going to tell them, Kara. That's what they were all doing. Because what they say in public and what they say to you privately is very, as you know, as a reporter. And they're like, we're really against him, and we're going to tell him. I'm like, you're not going to tell him. I know you won't. And they didn't. And then they skulked out and said nothing after he was doing all kinds of terrible things. And the only person I have to say that I did talk to was Elon. And I said, he went, and I said, you can't go. You're an immigrant. Like, how can you not say something in that group? And he said, Kara, I'll convince him. I'll be the one to convince him. And I said, well, Jesus, it's nice to meet you, but you're not. This man is a longtime racist, longtime anti-immigrant. Like, look at his history. And that's what they did. And so when they just did this last one, not surprised.
I was just about to ask, seeing what you saw in 2016.
No, because now this time they want AI in their favor. They want crypto in their favor. They want a whole range of tax issues. They want no regulation. They want unfettered access to whatever the space, whatever it happened. Oddly enough, Elon wasn't there, which is because now he's whatever on the outs. And so they want things, and they are willing to put up with anything and say anything. And it's even got to the level of Tim Cook, who is a typically very, I liked him a lot, but he handed him a gold statue. And I was at the morning show premiere last night, I ran into an Apple executive, and I said, he goes, what are you going to do? This is the price of admission. You have to give him the friggin' statue. And he goes, what are you going to do? And I said, not this fucking thing. Like, are you kidding me? Like, just, like, don't show up. So anyway, they make the excuse of shareholder value. I think it's not, I actually have talked to a lot of people close to Apple, and they're like, we think shareholder value is not served by having to act like we're some tin horn country and we have to give bribes to people. This is just not, the rule of law is important for shareholders, not this kind of obsequious behavior. Like, it's not good for shareholders for this to be the way deals are done. It's non-capitalist. It's non-capitalist for the United States to own a piece of Intel. What? Like, I'm sorry, you're worried about Zoran Mandami and we're buying Intel? Like, it's like 3 grocery stores to help poor people have better vegetables. Oh no, it's communism. It's communism for the United States government to be in Intel, or to take a VIG from NVIDIA and from AMD. I love Lisa Su, but does she want to pay a VIG to the US government? That's not capitalism. I just interviewed John Malone, and he was saying, oh, it's a good thing. I'm like, oh, you're a socialist then. Like, I'm not a socialist. I said, that's socialism, however you slice it. And so, anyway, it's irritating. I find it irritating.
In women's spaces, we often talk about, the world would be so much better if women were running everything.
Well, that's true.
But I want to ask, if this meeting was Mara Zuckerberg instead of Mark and Samantha Altman instead of Sam at the White House, would it be different?
I don't know. I mean, there's some terrible women. I mean, obviously, they're all over the place. But you just had Melinda on stage, right? Amazing woman, astonishing woman, actually. And you think about the people that are doing really impactful things and are doing them not selflessly. They're also doing investments and things like that. But look, Lorraine Powell Jobs, standing up with The Atlantic. She's the only one with balls that I can see in publishing right now. Jeff Bezos, are you kidding? Like, couldn't be smaller. You got Lorraine, who's running The Atlantic and doing all kinds of really interesting things through Emerson. You have Mackenzie Scott, who you don't see her name on things. She's just, here, Planned Parenthood, here's $100 million. Please don't mention my name. Like, whatever she happens to do. You have Melinda. You do see, interestingly, a lot of the women that have been involved being much more proactive and positive. And even in Melinda's case, she gave $10 million to Richard Reeves, because she's not leaving men out. She's just saying, I'm going to focus on women. But at the same time, she's giving money to boys and men and to try to figure it out. And as someone who I have 3 sons, I have 1 daughter and 3 sons, I'm like, it's really important that we figure out a way to solve some of these problems, some of which were caused by social media and all kinds of stuff. It's super important because, and as Melinda knows, if women are mad, nobody suffers. If men are mad or raging, we're in trouble, because you know what happens then with rage. Look what's happening in Nepal right now, for example.
On the subject of women, especially in Silicon Valley, in your book you write about Ellen Powell's gender bias trial against Claire Perkins. That was 10 years ago. That was 2015. Yeah. And in referring to that time, you had said that the exclusion of women was not an oversight but deliberate, or that was one of the lessons of that time.
I happen to like John Doerr, who runs that. I think he's done a lot of great things. I think what happens is it's no accident. It either has to be that only slight white men are the smartest people on the planet, who now take a lot of the human growth hormones, so they're not slight anymore. But and is there anyone more vain than men? I'm sorry. It's so funny. If with all the fasting and all the different Ozempic things. Literally, when it's women, it's an eating disorder. When it's men, it's called body hacking. Just pointing that out, right? Come on, like, give me a break. What was I talking about? Anyway, with Ellen, I think what it was they think it's a meritocracy. They use words like that, meritocracy. And I've used this in the book, when it's a mirrortocracy. Like, somehow the smartest, like the board of Twitter, good example, which I have in the book. I wrote a great piece when I was running All Things D. I was the editor, but I also wrote and did reporting. And one of the things that I did was this story of the board of Twitter, and Twitter was always running itself into a wall. It just was one of these companies that was so feckless and ridiculous and highly emotional as a group of people. And they had 10 white men on the board, and kept running it in a wall, And the lead of the story I wrote, I was pointing this out, was how badly they were doing with this board of directors. Twitter was a very diverse audience, and they didn't have a diverse board. It was the same people, same age. And I was like, how could it be that why did it get like this? Are they the smartest people? Because clearly not, because the thing is being run into a wall every 5 minutes. And so I wrote, the lead I wrote, which was, I should have retired right after I wrote this lead, was on the board of Twitter, which has 3 Peters and a Dick, which was great. They have run it into a wall, essentially. And the CEO, Dick Coddle, called me, who I like very much. And he goes, that was really funny. I go, I know, it's a really good penis joke. The editor approved it, which was me. Which is great running things, ladies. Let me just say, you can do whatever you want. I own everything that I make now. So therefore, I make great decisions for myself. But when we wrote that, he said, well, I don't think it's fair. He goes, we have, I'll never forget this, and he knows, we talk about this a lot. He goes, we have standards. And I said, what are your standards? Sucking? Is that your standard? Because you aren't any good. So it seems like this is what DEI is. You're letting all these men who are incapable of running this company, it didn't make any sense. And so it always struck me in Silicon Valley, they always pulled out the word standards when they were talking about women or people of color. But they never said standards about these feckless men. And there's some good men, there's some bad men, but they never got the same scrutiny. And that's what we did at All Things Tea.
And 10 years later from that trial?
Same.
Same.
Worse. Look at that table. It was all men and their girlfriends or wives.
Now mentioning...
Lisa Sue was there.
Mentioning All Things D, one of our Forbes executive editors, John, happened to be your first hire at All Things
John
D.
Peczkowski.
So I asked him what I should ask you, and he said, in part, he gave me a few good tidbits, but he said, what's the point of knowing the bigs if you can't help the littles?
That's right.
What does that mean to you?
I have access to a lot of people, besides having their cell phone numbers. I'm super irritating texter. I always text people like, what the fuck? Like after Gavin Newsom did that Steve Bannon thing, I literally like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, what, because I thought it was kind of a tongue bath for him. We had a good debate, but if you have access to people and tell them things to their face, you're helping, like, they are surrounded by, as they get wealthier, and I knew most of them before they had money. Like, I knew Jeff Bezos when he was poor, I knew Sergey and Larry when they were poor. Like, what's the point of being there if you don't tell them the truth? And what happens, unfortunately, with some of them, not all of them, Mark Cuban's really good with feedback, right? Because he's an adult. Even Tim Cook is great with feedback. I was supposed to go to the thing, but I went to the morning show instead, because, like, of course I did. And they showed the new phones yesterday. And I was going to meet with them. I was going to tell them, what in the fuck with that statue? Like, come on. Like, I want to hear your explanation. If you have access to those people and you don't tell them the truth, what's the point? What am I going to get for not saying anything? What do I get? Like an extra minute with them? I don't understand. And so if you can't, like, articulate what other people, how it affects other people, what's the point of having that access to me at all? And there isn't right now I'm working on this series for, I'm not supposed to say, but whatever. I'm working on a docu-series for my next book, which is about longevity and healthcare and where it's going and all this amazing stuff happening around cancer research and obesity and all this stuff. And it was born out of the narcissistic dinner parties I'd have to have with these men in Silicon Valley who are trying to body hack. And I thought, look, things that are happening now are astonishing and miraculous around healthcare. I'm going to start with the narcissism, and then I'm going to show you, I'm going to blow up the charlatans, and then show you how to democratize people not dying of cancer, not dying of obesity, so I'm using this access to the top of it in order to talk about what's actually happening and how to get it to more people.
When we talk about helping the littles with access to the big,
yeah,
we could have a whole separate panel on AI.
Yeah.
But I know it'll be a conversation later in the day, so I'm curious, what keeps you up at night? Because you have called the men of Silicon Valley careless in their pursuit of power, and AI offers tremendous power.
Yes, I'm not nervous about AI. It's a tool like anything else, and I really do encourage everyone to use it. You need to, do not opt out of it, because they won't, first of all. The other thing is, everything is a tool or a weapon, right? And I'm not nervous about AI. I'm nervous about the people using AI, the bad people using AI. I'm nervous about not being able to understand it and have regular people to have control of it. What really worried me about that dinner, besides the ridiculous, slavish obsequiousness, which was disappointing to say the least, was the idea that 6 or 7 people are going to decide things that are critical for I'm sorry, we still live in a democracy. Citizens should be deciding standards around AI, what we should do in school, what we should do at work, how it should be rolled out. Instead, it's going to be, I like The Gilded Age. I don't know about you guys. I love that show. I love Train Daddy, but I don't want Train Daddies. I like that Train Daddy, and I'm a lesbian, and I like that Train Daddy. I also like Carrie Coons, who's really fantastic. But we don't want a small group of homogeneous people making decisions for the rest of us. It's just ridiculous. I had an interview with Barry Diller, who I adore. He's really an interesting character, in media. And one thing he said about Silicon Valley, I think still sticks. He goes, it's so homogeneous, it's a miracle their children have teeth, right? He was using a metaphor, but I love that. I was like, exactly. And so if you want a small group of people making decisions about the future for you, That's what's happening right now. And Donald Trump, the coin-op president, is I don't have a problem with Donald Trump. He's a coin-op president. That's what he is. He likes money. He wants money. He wants power and money. I understand him completely, right? He's sort of your garden variety corrupt person. These people, I don't like him. Like, let's be clear. Obviously, these people are doing something else, controlling power in a very concentrated form, and that is not what this country's about. It is not. I mean, it has been at times, but it's also really critical that we make sure that we are part of the solution. So I urge everyone to use it. I urge it. Like, the one thing that I've been very particular about is these chatbots that kids use. That, you know, I interviewed the parents of the woman who, the kid who committed suicide after having a relationship with a chatbot, and these fuckers are trying to pretend it was user-generated content. This was sloppily managed, sloppily made software that took a 14-year-old and manipulated this kid. It was not this kid's fault, and it was not the parents' fault. It was like putting on the road a car that maybe blows up and acting like it wasn't your fault for doing so. I'm hoping to interview the parents recently on the ChatGPT thing, where the same thing happened. That kind of stuff, I'm spending a lot of time. And I actually just saw Sam Altman, and I was like, I'm gonna roast you right up. And he's like, I get it. And and they actually tried to fix it a little bit, and it still wasn't good enough. And they're allowed to release products that are dangerous to society, and we clap for them. Well, I don't clap for them. That's, you know, I want them to make great products. I want our society to move forward. I love capitalism. I own my own companies and everything else, but I will not have them be advantaged at our expense. And I'll just finish. One of the stories, when I worked for the New York Times, I worked for them briefly I was just a contractor columnist, and the reason I did it is I wanted people to hear what I had to say. The very first piece I wrote, I think, was really critical, and I think it started the conversation. I called it the expensive education of Mark Zuckerberg. And 4 out of 5 people in this world use a Facebook product, right? He's learning in real time the consequences of what he's doing, and we have to wait for the penny to drop in that guy's head before the damage is done. The expensive education is being paid by us, not him. And so that's one of the things I want to point out and that iterates whenever I'm doing. And the same thing with AI.
Well, you will not clap for Sam Altman, but we unfortunately have run out of time. So please clap for Kara Swisher.
Thank you.